Lucas, why are you actually so fat? I thought down there's nothing to eat. I think
Wow, wow.
that's so it's also interesting
Mhm.
for the people just I will come quickly to that point for the people who watching the video who actually don't know how BAS and everything is going in Namibia. For just basic information, Namibia is 2 times bigger than Germany, but they have less people, so they have 2.5, 2.6 million people in this full country.
Yeah, around that, around
And
that, around
yeah,
that.
one of the biggest part of the capital city is Katutura, the township there, where
Right.
the basketball art school is in. So before I started the year, I heard a lot of people telling me, are you sure you want to do that? Going to a township where all these poor people live and certain things like that. So very basically, just like I could never understand them. Why they could just say that because I mean they never met someone from a township or however, and I think it's just a general thing. Especially Germans do that. They just look at something and immediately they have opinion on it, but they don't go deeper to it. So even I actually wanted to make a cut right now, but I think it's also good right now. I want to have a reaction on your side. I mean, you remember when I came back to Germany after a year in Namibia, I was
Mhm.
pretty fat. I think I gained a lot of kilos. Um, so do you know what somebody said to me? It's actually very hard, and I just want to catch up your reaction. And to add on after that, I also would like to know if there's still racism in Namibia from Germans to Namibians. But first, let me tell you what somebody told me. Lucas, why are you actually so fat? I thought down there's nothing to eat. I think
Wow, wow.
that's hard, right?
Yeah, that is
Uh,
really, you know, you know what? Let me just get to something quickly before I come to that statement. Was I grew up in Komansdal actually, and Komansdal is like is in between town and Katutura,
mm,
so it's kind of like in between. So back in the apartheid era, Komansdal was considered to be like a almost white. So my parents they moved in there like back in 1990, and I think it was the end of 1990, and I think end of 1991, I think, and that's when Namibia got independence the same year, and that is when we started moving there. We moved in there, so I got to experience a lot of racism, especially when I was in school. And my primary school was very close to my house. It was like a 15-minute walk. And a lot of kids there, because I remember my sister was probably one of the first black kids to be at that school. And I remember one time, because she started a year before me, one day she came home and she had her hands burned because apparently she was sitting in front of the heater and one of the kids in the school in the classroom pushed her into the heater, so her hand was burned because of that, and she was always having like trouble and whatnot because of the fact that she was black. So in my mind, before I went to school, my mom was already like very like, yo, so you gotta be tough because the kids at school are really tough and they're mean
mhm.
and so forth. So I already had to adapt that culture, because I also saw my sister coming home. She'd be crying. She has all kinds of stories and all of that. So that also kind of like changed my mindset a lot. So when I went to school, I had to be tough. So I think I remember when I went there, I wasn't the only black child. There were some black kids around me, but it was kind of difficult because I had to learn the language first, which is Afrikaans.
Mhm.
and then English, and Afrikaans was like the first language at that school because it's in a community of Afrikaans-speaking people.
Mm-hmm.
So already there was already that notion that, oh, you guys are black, you know, you are Kafir, because in Africa they call them, in Namibia they call them Kafirs, you know, being of black color. So I had to really go a lot through that, and I had to be tough. Like, I remember a lot of times I had to fight after school, and I had to come across a lot of things. But in the end of the day, it's something that really made me tough in a way that I understood it. But it also changed my mindset because, mind you, I grew up in between Katutura and town, the communities that are close to town. So being in this place, everybody only spoke bad things about Katutura. So in my mind, that's also what I thought, because I wasn't exposed much to Katutura because I was just enclosed at home, you know. So it's just home, school, home, nothing much. That's basically where my life was. So I kind of like, there was a disconnect between me and a lot of communities. So I wasn't really fitting in the colored community because, I mean, now, just to explain, colored in Namibia does not mean black. In America, when you say colored, you're kind of referring to a person of black skin color. But in colored in Namibia means between, it's more like a person who's like almost close to white, but it's a mixed with an Afrikaner. So that's a bit different. So it was more of that aspect that you're not entirely. Let me just say, I was a little bit in a cultural confusion because I wasn't really white. Colored, and I wasn't really black to embrace my mom's culture. Because growing up, I was mixed. My mom being a Namibian, Vambo speaking, and my father being Angolan. So even the way, growing up in that, I kind of not really spoke much of my mom's language at school because we'll speak Afrikaans or English, and my Afrikaans was really bad. So at home, we'll speak Oshiwambo with my mom, which is Kwanyama, and with my dad, we'll sometimes speak English or Kwanyama in between. And also, I think there was also that perception that, oh, we gotta teach you guys how to speak English, so let's learn how to speak English. So that was also another issue. So with my dad that we had. So now, when I came into high school, there was a big issue because now when I came to Concordia, it was the right mix because it had a lot of black kids who were from the north, and it had a hostel. And it had a lot of black kids who were from Angola, who were schooling in Namibia at that point in time. So I kind of had both my cultures brought together to one school. My mom being Kwanyama speaking, Oshiwambo, so I'm kind of there. And then my dad being Angolan, I kind of had that too because there were a lot of Angolan speaking kids at school. You understand? So it came together for me kind of well, but I was never accepted on both sides because I don't speak Oshiwambo that fluently. So the Oshiwambo speaking kids will be like, no, you're not Oshiwambo enough, or you are trying to be something that you're not. You understand? Because I can't just say, oh no, I'm leaning to my Wambo roots because I also have Angolan roots. And then my Angolan friends will look at my surname and they'll be like, oh, Malakias, Matias. And they're like, yo, come here, you know? And I'm playing basketball. And a lot of the basketball playing kids were from Angola also. So now they were like, you want to be basketball player? This is not what Vambos do, so you're not really one of us. So there was always that huge disparity between where I am and everyone thought I had a crisis identity because I couldn't really lean to one side. So I really it was hard really in the beginning because also for me, it was also not so comfortable speaking Oshiwambo in front of people because for them, it's like, it's funny. It sounded funny because it had a dialect which was not similar to them. So, and then at the same time, I couldn't speak Portuguese and I never really wanted to speak Portuguese, but my Angolan friends never bothered, you know? But they were always like, yo, you gotta learn, man, because your father is Angolan, you gotta learn how to speak Portuguese. And my father was like, yo, I don't want my kids to learn Portuguese because Portuguese is not the language of my mother. It's rather a language of a colonial who was a Portuguese. So that's what I also told my friends, like, yo, guys, you gotta learn the different ethnic groups in Angola before you start talking about, because it's like you telling me I must learn how to speak English. So there was always that, but it never really, I never really set in. So now coming to Katutura, there was always that mindset that you can't come to Katutura because it was dirty, the crime rate was high, all of this poverty, things like that. So it was always considered as a downgrade. So even schooling at a school which was in Hockland Park, it was kind of difficult because now when you come to Katutura, you're like, no, it's not the kind of school, you get what I mean?
Mm.
But then now, years come down the line and I'm working in Katutura actually. You understand? So that changed my mindset a lot different because I came from this place where everybody used to speak so bad about it. And then I find myself, I'm working here and I'm loving it. So that's where the difference came in. So everything that I experienced was more like a journey, and it kept transitioning so much to from what people told me to what I actually experienced myself. Yes, and I did have family in Katutura, and I used to go visit them, but my parents were so protected. They were just like, okay, you're going to aunt's place there, and you're coming back out. So there's not much there. You had like a lot of friends in Katutura and whatnot. So it was like in and out, not too many things that could affect you, or you're exposed to so many different things. But the older you get, you kind of just realize that people are only placing their fears onto you, but you're not really experiencing what you need to experience, because some of these experiences you need them for growth. And that's what I think that was the biggest things I had to learn growing up, and especially coming in stages from primary school to secondary school to university, and then working in Katutura. Those are the things I had to learn. And then that's now where you came in and say, you know what, racism has always been there, but I have experienced racism a lot more from not the white people per se as much, but I've experienced it more from the colored people in my community, because I had to fight a lot, because it was always like, oh, the black kid, and I had to defend myself in many, many cases, and that's where I experienced a lot of racism. And then when I got to high school, I experienced a lot of tribalism rather than not racism. I experienced a lot of tribalism because we're all of the same color, but we disliked each other because of certain things. And I learned very early that since I'm not a full Oshuambo speaking, and I'm not a full Angolan speaking, or I'm not a full Namib, I try to embrace it and I try to bring it together because I felt like that made me unique, and I always liked being different. So I never really cared about whether I hanged out with the Hero kids or the Mambo kids, whatever. It never bothered me because I wanted to experience everything, because I felt to myself, hey, I'm a mixed, so why not, So every time people come to me and say, hey, what tribe are you? And I'm like, I'm Namibian. And they felt offended because they were like, hey, you can't just be Namibian, you have to be something. You understand? You're either this or you're that, But I love that fact that I was Namibian, And my Angolan people, they were so fully embracing because they never had this tribal thing to say, oh, you are Kimbundu, or you are Chokwe, or you are Kikongo. These are the different tribes. It's just some few tribes in Angola. They were like, oh, we are all Angolians and we all speak Portuguese. So it unified them. You understand? It unified them to the point where, and I liked that about it. So they never really said, oh, you are this or you are that. So I leaned more to that because they didn't really bother who you were, as long as we are all Angolians, and that's it. We have fun. You get it. And that's what I liked about it. I really like that aspect that I don't have to be a certain tribe. Let me just be Namibian and enjoy being Namibian, and that's what I liked about it, And since then, for me, that was the biggest, I think that was the biggest lesson I had to learn in life early. And I think it's also the one that made the biggest difference for me. And coming to Katutura, working in Katutura also changed my life, my mindset a lot more, because I realized that these barriers that we put in our minds, because it was based off an apartheid era where you had different, you had like in Katutura itself, you have the Bamboo location, you have the Herero location, you have the Damara location and whatnot. And then when I started working here at Special Olympics, I remember people saying, oh, the Damaras are like this. Oh, this is like this, you know. It really changed me a lot, because I never looked at it from as a tribal view. I just looked at it like we're all Namibians and we're all trying to get somewhere, you understand? And that really made me unify, or that made my life so much easier, because and I don't want tribe to be the restriction, because it limits how you think in general and how you perceive things. And that also comes towards also to racism, you know. I mean, racism is one of the most underlying discriminations nationally. But I think the reason why I wasn't so much, where I didn't see so much of it, is because I didn't really get to go to so many different places, you know, that had people that were racist. But I've seen it, and I've also witnessed it, like in firsthand. But the thing about what I really not tried to mind myself about racism is, since I grew up being called black so much, or being Kafir so much, and I had to fight my way through so many things, I grew a tough skin around it. So that even when a white person starts being racial towards me, I might not notice it, because I grew up in this environment which was already so tough, and I started worrying more about tribal than race. You understand? So that was a big difference. And with that difference, I took that. It really taught me a lot. So I took that in my life. So for me, racism it's there, but it doesn't affect me as much as tribalism affects me. Because I feel like tribalism for me is more, it rubs off me more wrong than a racist person. You understand? I had another experience when we used to go to church afternoon, and this church was in town. It was in Church Street. Church Street is the street close to DHPS. We were there, you know. There was a church there. So we used to go there in the afternoons, because in the morning there was an English session, and my mom, she preferred the afternoon session because it was in Ushuambo. And I remember I was going to church, and this one afternoon the church was full, and we were just outside fooling around as kids, because we used to be very naughty, especially myself. I was a really mischievous kid. You won't believe it. So in the church, next to the church, there was an apartment. I don't forget this. There's an apartment, and this apartment had a lot of white people in it. And it was very early. I think it was like around about 98, 96. I think I was probably still grade 6 or grade 7. Or maybe even grade 5, I think. So the church had like a slope before you get into this apartment. But there was a fence that separated us. So I don't know. I was sitting outside, and by the fence, the kids were playing. And then I just saw them running quickly away. So I don't know what they were running for, but I wanted to see what it was. So as soon as I went over to see, downstairs, there was a white guy with a gun in his hand pointing at me from down the flat. And he was pointing up at me. I never had a gun pointed in my life that time. I froze. I froze, and I remember very well it was a revolver, because I started looking into guns. It was a revolver, and I was shocked. I was in total shock. And only when it hit me that this guy is pointing a gun at me, that's when I decided to move away backwards, slowly. You understand? And that's one experience that never left my mind till today. And I can still see that man whenever I think about it. And he was a white person. So I always think about it. Why would you take a gun and point at kids at church? You understand? So I don't know. Maybe it was the stones that were falling off this cliff by buy the apartments. I don't know, maybe that's what it was, or he just wanted to scare us because maybe he wanted to take a nice afternoon nap. I don't know. But for me, that was a really racial thing to do, because I don't think if those were white kids, you scare them off the same way.
Yeah.
I really don't think that was the case, you know. So those are some of the experiences I had growing up with racism and stuff. And it really changes your mind towards it. And I, for one, I never really looked into, I don't look into racism because it doesn't affect me as much as tribalism affects me. I think I get more affected by the fact that we can't be unified as Black people or as a community as Namibians than worry about racism, which is a minority group, which is not really a minority in the sense that they are marginalized, but they have more power and things. But I just feel like they're a minority group, and for me, I don't feel that should be the case, because I feel like as Namibians, we should be unified rather than to look into racism. That's my point on it. I don't know if I went a little bit off topic, but it's something that I was thinking of also.